Okay, so this is our launch tasting training, and we're just going to go over some of the initial steps to take when you are going to have your first tasting. This is great for anyone who's a new ambassador who is doing their first tasting and wants to know, what you need, how to prepare, what you should bring, all those kind of good things. And then if you're an existing ambassador, but you might have been a tasting in a little while, then also for you. So I am going to, I think probably will need to mute people, or if you can't, go ahead and mute yourself. And that way, we can limit the background noise, okay? All right, so for this tasting training, we're going to use what has just been posted to the website, which is top tips for a successful training, successful tasting. These are the tips that Kathy McKean, our new field development manager, has put together for us. So instead of kind of reinventing the wheel, I'm going to use her resources to walk us through getting prepared for your first tasting. I'm going to implement a couple little things here and there to just round out, this list, and also to make it appropriate for you as someone who might be doing a launch tasting. And as we go along, if you want to just jot down your questions, I will certainly, make sure to try to address your questions at the end. So with that, I'm going to share my screen so you can see what we are going to be using. Okay. So if you can see my screen, what I've got up now is the top tips for successful tasting. This is, again, something that you can find in your back office. It's going to be in your resource center under training. So if you want, you might want to have this up and follow along as we do the training today, and make notes on it, ask questions. But this is also something you can always refer back to as you're preparing for each and every one of your tastings, until you just kind of feel like you know by the back of your hand. But I think a checklist is always good. Just the other day, I forgot my posi pours. I was going to a tasting that was supposed to have 20 guests, and I just thought, oh my God, how am I going to have enough wine? It worked out, but again, I thought to myself, if I just looked at my checklist. So it's always great to have a checklist. So I want to start with the first step here. Well, the first thing I want to go over actually is, what is a tasting? So we kind of know what a tasting is, in the fact that we've been to one. We know we're going to go and we're going to taste wine. But I want to just kind of also come to it from more of an idealistic point of view, which is the tasting really is our opportunity to share the brand with other people, share our wines with other people, but it's also a way to introduce people to the whole world of wine. We have a world, we have a lifestyle. The tasting is the invitation to the wine lifestyle. It's an invitation to a luxury lifestyle. It's an invitation to world of BOISSET, which is filled with imagination, creativity, history, family, passion, joie de vivre. So this is the world of BOISSET, and that's what we're representing when we're doing our tasting, whether it's for yourself or for a host. So keeping that in mind, it's also just a fun time to get together with friends and colleagues and have an experience together. So that is really what the tasting is in terms of what you're bringing to it and what the guests are there to experience and what the opportunity of it is for us as ambassadors in this business. And then when it's your launch tasting, there's other ways you can think of it. It's all those things we just talked about, but it's also your debut. It's your ribbon cutting ceremony. It's your entree into the world of wine and your new career. It's a training ground for you as well. I mean, when this is your launch tasting, it's the first time you've probably done a tasting, right? So it's still training, and that's okay. So it's okay if you forget something, or if you didn't say everything you want to say. this is an opportunity for you to just kind of get your feet wet, get used to it, get familiar, have fun with it, and also understand it's a great opportunity to understand that the most that people want out of a tasting is fun. So for many people, they get concerned about how much they need to know about the wine and this and that. But honestly, people are there to have fun. Drink wine, have fun. So it's an opportunity for you to also experience that as being someone who's kind of like leading that experience. The other thing is that it's also for you, it's also you actually taking action on what's important to you. It's you taking action on fulfilling on your why and taking action on what you're passionate about. So you can feel proud about that as well. The other thing with us is that we do we train by I do, we do, you do. So for your first tasting, it's typically going to be your sponsor who is leading that tasting whenever possible. It's not always possible, but whenever possible, your sponsor is going to lead your first tasting. Your second tasting is going to be we do. So hopefully your sponsor can be there for your second tasting as well, where you, though, however, will be leading most of that tasting experience. And on the third tasting, it's, you do. So I do, we do, you do. And that's how we usually try to get you going with your first group of tastings. So, so let's look at, let's look at the prepping the host. So going from these top tips for successful tasting, in this case, you are the host. So the tasting plate that you're going to use is typically going to be the one that came with your business kit. So either the classic tasting, or I guess it's going to be the reserve tasting. For your launch tasting, you're going to invite probably still 12 to 15 guests. That's a good number of people for your first tasting. You can do more, you can do less, you can do 2 first launch tastings. It's up to you. But just as a good rule of thumb, anywhere between 10 to 15 are really going to be good. Now, I'll just say, here's a pitfall. If you are interested in sales with the tastings, certainly with your first tastings, the pitfall is thinking that if you have more people, you're going to have more sales. But in fact, what happens is that when you have more people, you've got much more crowd control to manage and less attention on the wines. So a lot more attention on the fun, which is fine. But but so here's the thing about that. If you want to bring all your friends, all your family, have your neighborhood, have a grand old time, you're gonna need more wine for that event. That's fine, and it's gonna be a little bit more like just a coming out party, the debut, and maybe less about as much of the sales. When you have a smaller event, and maybe you do 2 smaller events, you can focus a lot more on the wines, the stories, your participation, and hopefully more sales. So just keep that in mind. Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better in this case, okay? So if you are in the West Coast, we have the fortune of being really close to the wineries. So we can order a tasting flight, which is a couple days out. If you're on the East Coast, Midwest, you're gonna need the 10 days to 14 days out to order your tasting flight. So be aware of that. Okay, for your tasting as well, keep it simple on the food. So these are all the same steps that you would follow when you have a host, but for yourself as you're self-hosting, keep it simple on the food. Cheese, crackers, if you want some dark chocolate, great, but simple is gonna be best, and you're gonna keep the tasting focused on the tasting and the wines. So let's go over the next piece, which is prepping the ambassador. So how do you prep yourself to prepare for the tasting? So in this case, she's going straight into what you need for the tasting. I want to take it one step before that, because a lot of times people are going to wonder, you being the ambassador, how can I prepare to share the wines? What should I be sharing? How can I know more about the wines? So here are a couple resources that we have that I would suggest you do before you have your tasting in preparation for that. One is to go ahead and get your tasting script printed. And that is going to be, your tasting script is going to also be in the training section, and you'll find wine tasting script. So here's training, and you'll just kind of pop through here to the ambassador training section. Oh yeah, here it goes. And then scroll down here, and you'll see basic wine tasting script. So this is a pretty in-depth script about what you can say, you know, the importance of thanking your host when you do a tasting, when to present certain kinds of commercials throughout your tasting, dropping things like booking seeds, introducing the Wine Society, how to talk about the ambassador program. I'm going to circle back to some of these things because we go over it in the top tips agenda. And since I'm following that, I'm not going to go into detail right now. But you do want to print this out. I would read through it and prepare any materials that you think you need to prepare and print out before your tasting. But read through this, maybe even speak it out loud in the mirror if that's something that helps you prepare to speak out loud and get comfortable with what you're saying. The next thing is, for each of the wines that you're going to be presenting for your tasting, you want to print out the tech notes. So to print out the tech notes, you want to go to the tasting the tasting experiences section, and take a look at the different experiences that are available. And let's say you have the classic curated experience. I would just pop on over to that page, and you can see all the wines are listed right here and highlighted, hyperlinked. So you can go to any of those wines and get the notes and maybe even see a video about that wine. So for example, you've got the Deloach Pinot Rosé. Let's look at that. So if you want to learn about each of the wines you're presenting, you can go to each of those links, open up that wine, read through the details here. And in some cases, they'll have a little video, so you can watch the video about it and get a little bit more insight, especially from Marnie Old, who is our sommelier, right? And then just down below, you're going to go here to the tech notes. And right here, you'll download text sheet. Taking a little long to open because we're on the video on my share screen, but you'll take a look, you'll print out the text sheet, and then what I do is I read through the entire text sheet, right? And I decide what I want to share. So for example, I'm not going to share about this in the vineyard stuff. Quite frankly, I don't know enough about it. Most of the guests are probably not going to be interested in that so much. But I will want to share something like, oh, this is aged in a mix of oak and stainless steel. Oh, the leaves are stirred in there to create a touch of ripeness. Okay, wonderful. It's aged 3 months in barrel. So that kind of stuff people are going to want to know. Also, the grapes were destemmed for overnight juice to skin contact. So this wine was only on its skin for 24 hours to make the rosé color. So that's something that might be of interest to your guests. And it's also a good talking point about how rosé is made and how it gets its color. And then, of course, these tasting notes are always great because it's going to reference aromas, flavors, and things like that, which people always love to hear about. So with that, I just go ahead and I highlight or I underline the pieces of information that I find the most useful. So that's the kind of thing you'd want to print out before your tasting and look through and prepare from. And then the other thing that we have that you can work with is the videos by Marnie Old. So we recorded several videos that could help you prepare for your tasting. So this is the wine training. So there's the top 4 here are talking about the food pairing options. That's optional to me. If you want to do that, that's up to you. But otherwise, I would focus on this host a tasting chapters 1 through 5. Okay. That's going to give you the steps about discover your wine style and how to host a tasting. Okay, so I'm going to just close the door here because I've got some be back in my place. Okay. Hi, everyone. You can see my room. Okay, do you have any questions so far? As I'm getting myself established here. Okay, so next up, that's all the stuff you're going to do, of course, before your tasting and preparation to learn about the wines and get a little bit more comfortable. But again, as I said, you don't need to know everything. You don't have to have everything memorized. It's all about your notes in front of you and kind of reference. Okay, so let's talk about what you'll need for your tasting. You're going to figure out what works best for you over time, but here are a couple of suggested items. Well, here are some actually items you need, and then I'll have some suggestions. So from the top tips, you want to make sure you're taking your wine glasses, you have your business cards, wine opener, of course, order request forms, the tasting menu. So the tasting menu and the order request forms are brand new as well. They just kind of recreated these. And so now you actually get to have the order form on the back of your tasting menu, which is kind of cool. So let's go look at that real quick. So that's going to be in your resource center. And right when you go to your resource center, you'll see all the main things that we use the most often are right here. So for our classic curated tasting experience, and you're going to zoom into a page. Okay. It's coming. Okay. So you see, you get, this is the brand new tasting menu, which looks really beautiful. I would definitely suggest printing this out in color. I typically will get cardstock, just a ream of cardstock paper, and just print it through my regular printer color. And I have a little scissors, but I just happen to use these guys. Oh, you probably can't see me. I use like slicer things to kind of cut the pages. But then you have, two menus per person. And then on the flip, also the menus go through, they reference what kind of wine style you've got there. It's going to give you little details about each of the wines. And then on the flip side, you've got the order form. So you have all of it in one place. Now you just need one of these per person. Okay, so that's the tasting menu and order form. Next, you want to have the couple guest tours, which you probably got in your business as well. Tours for anyone re-mute everyone. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so then also you're going to want to go ahead and print up the current specials. So you always want to have some current specials available to reference for others. Again, so if you go back to your resource center, current specials will always be here, updated every month. So just print one of those out for each person. You want to have a custom label flyer because it's great to reference that. You can get that in our marketing section, which is right here, custom label. Have pens, of course. And you want to have, if you do have these, if you have some display items, sometimes I bring an additional bottle that is a beautiful bottle, like the Deloach Estate Pinot Noir, because it's got that fleur de lis on it. You might want to bring a bottle of Frenchie. People love the Frenchie label. If you have a custom label sample, you can do that. There are samples that you can order as a one-off, and in the wines order sections, you can also do that. And I would suggest, just as a nice touch, ordering the black mini folders to put all of your items into one folder to keep things nice for your guest. But that's not required, so you don't have to do that. Okay, next, we want to go over prepping the stage, which is, where are you going to set up your tasting? Where are you going to have your wines? You want to make it convenient. You want to make it in a place where it's somewhat close to the guests, of course. So finding a place that's going to be comfortable in the home or wherever you're pouring. The ideal thing too is, like, as soon as you get to your tasting, is to open up the bottles. So, when you go to someone's home, you're probably looking at it, as soon as you get there, maybe it's 30 minutes in advance of the tasting. So you want to open up your wines at that point. When it's your launch tasting at your home, you can open up your wines, like an hour or so before, I would say, your red wines. So just take note of that. Opening up your red wines 30 to 60 minutes in advance of your tasting. Okay, so when you have your tasting, you're going to be greeting the guests. And the beautiful thing about this is that these are your guests. They know you. They want to see you. They want to celebrate you. They want to have fun with you. They want to drink with you. So in this case, for your launch tasting, it's going to be your people, your friends. They're going to be happy to see you. They're going to be supportive. You're going to be happy to see them. It's going to be awesome. So just know that is about, just being comfortable with everyone, getting everyone comfortable with each other. It's a great time to open up the sparkling, pour people a little taste of sparkling, and just give them a little taste so that people are not just, waiting around. They're there just to have a tasting. So usually when people arrive at the event, they're ready to go. So having the sparkling ready for them is a nice touch. We want to be prepared to do that. And then, what you'll do is get people seated, and you can use your sponsor to help with this, getting people seated, getting people set up wherever you're going to taste, whether that's going to be, in the living room, in a dining room, around the kitchen table, whatever it is. So starting to get people arranged in their seats is what you'll do next. And then you want to just kind of open the tasting. So a great thing to do really at this time is, even though it's your launch tasting and the sponsor is going to do the tasting on your behalf, these are still your guests. So this is a great thing to request of your host as well, is to just introduce the person who's going to be doing the tasting. In this case, because it's your tasting, you're self-hosting your launch, it's great to start the tasting with a little bit about why you joined the business. So thanking your guests for being there, letting them know how excited you are that they're there for you, that they're there to participate, to try the wines, how excited you are about the business, what this opportunity is for you, why did you join this, BOISSET, what is it all about? What are you hoping to create out of participating? What attracted you to BOISSET or being in the wine business? These are the kinds of things that you can share in a sentence or two. Okay, because when people feel your excitement, they're going to be excited for you and they want to support that. So certainly share your story, your personal story or your I story. And if you want some training on that, please reach out to me, because we did some training on that about two team meetings ago. And I also have some materials that I can work with you on that, okay? Here's the thing too, at the opening of your tasting, now this might be something that your sponsor does at the opening because it's your first tasting, it's something you will eventually do, but you want to let people know why they're here. So we're here to have a tasting of our BOISSET wines. We're going to taste 6 wines tonight. Typically we offer exclusive wines that cannot be found in stores or restaurants. So it's a really unique opportunity to taste wines that you can't taste anywhere else. And because of that, we do offer offer these wines, for order directly with the winery. So you're welcome to order the wines at the end of the tasting. So you might want to do something like take notes along the way so you can remember the kind of wines that you like at the end of the tasting. And you might want to use stars or happy faces or a number system, whatever you feel comfortable doing to note your preferences on the wine. And then you're saying something like that, and then you want to go into, or the host or your sponsor, sorry, will go into some of the history of BOISSET and sharing about our history and who we are. And the best way to find out more about who we are and our history is to look at our brochure. Quite frankly, you can reference the brochure and see a little bit more about our history that way. There's also a video in the back office called How Did Jean-Charles Get into the Wine Industry? So you can also look at that, and that would give you some insight into his story if you want to share more about his story. The other thing that you can do, which is really simple for either you to reference, or if you have a host that has a hookup for the TV, like an Apple TV or some sort of way you can hook up your cable, you can also show the video with Jean-Charles actually speaking. And that's going to be actually easy to find. It's on your website. It's under tasting host, and then this video here. And this is the video that is Jean-Charles sharing who he is, who BOISSET is, and the history of the company. So you don't even have to know the story. You can actually share the video, and that would be just fine. All right, so let's move on to sharing and presenting the wines. So time and time again, what I've heard most from ambassadors is that the wine sells itself. So we want to really let the wines speak for themselves. Again, you don't have to be a wine expert. You don't have to have the notes memorized. You don't have to know everything about the wine. What you do want to do is have wine in people's glasses so that they can experience it for themselves. And if you have a personal story about the wine, share those stories. Share why you love that wine. Share what that wine would go well with, or the time of day that wine would be perfect for. For example, I love that the vivacious wines are the kind of wines that you drink before the sun goes down. Those are the kind of wines you could sip on the porch, or sip near the pool. So kind of creating like those little moments that people can actually grasp and imagine and visualize for themselves. But again, your sponsor is going to most likely do your first tasting, so hopefully they're doing some of that. Okay, so according to the top tips for a successful tasting, you want to target about 45 to 60 minutes for presenting 6 wines, and that is for sure. That's all you need. You want to spend about 2 to 4 minutes per wine and share the following. You want to share things like the flavors and the aromas and certainly the grape varietal. All that you're going to see on the tasting notes, and which is why it's great to have those tasting notes in front of you and highlighting the pieces that you want to share with your guests. You want to share some of the food pairing ideas. The food pairing ideas are going to be either on that text sheet or they're going to be on the menu. They're now printed right there on the menu. And as I said, paint a picture about where that wine can be enjoyed. If you've got a nice red wine, you might say, this wine is perfect for a Wednesday night on the couch with popcorn or pizza. Or this is an amazing wine that you really want to pair a great steak with or burger with. Something like that. And it always is great if you've had personal experience with the wine that you can share that. The other thing is sharing a piece of history about that winery. So again, you can find out a lot about the history of those different wineries by watching some of the videos on each wine that we talked about earlier. When you go to the wine, you can click on one of those videos and that will give you some information. Okay. So I always, you're always looking at the glasses as well. That's always an indicator of when to pour the next wine. If you've got a third of the people with the empty glass, half of the people with the empty glass, you certainly want to start pouring the next wine. And another tip about this, I want to bring this up, is that a lot of times, especially also if it is with your friends, there is a inclination or a want to be a really great host, and so you want to pour people wine when their glass is empty, but more of the same wine. And sometimes people want to request more of the same wine, and I would caution against this. So you're pouring a 1 ounce pour or a 1 ounce taste per wine. This is going to allow you to get through the tasting and maximize your time, particularly when you are doing a tasting for someone else, right? You want to maximize your time. And also, you want people's attention. Quite frankly, the further you get in the tasting and the more people are drinking, the more, as I like to say, festive it's going to get, okay? People will get festive, okay? So you want to just kind of control that. So just pouring a 1 ounce pour per wine. And if people want more, I always say, you know what, we're going to go on to the next wine right now. So you'll want to make space for that. But we're going to have plenty of wine left over. So you'll be able to retaste at the end of the tasting. Okay. So let's get into planting the seeds. So this is the piece about planting seeds for your commercials. What little things that you want to share about your business throughout the tasting. So if you go back to the tasting script, it's really great because it really identifies the different opportunities to share a mini commercial. So you want to have things prepared to say about booking a tasting, becoming an ambassador, joining the wine society, corporate gifting, and monthly specials. So throughout the tasting, you've got opportunities to kind of sprinkle a little bit of this and a little bit of that into your tasting experience. So I would just probably go through this tasting script and see, kind of what's suggested when and where. For example, at wine 2, you're probably going to present the wine and then talk about the wine. And then I would go into presenting the wine society. So, just all the information about the wine society is on the wine society page or in your guest brochure, so you can look at details there. But there's also a printout in your back office called Benefits of a Wine Society. But, essentially you're going to share with people that this is totally flexible. You get wines from most of our winery properties in your shipment. You can make a change anytime. You can skip if you need to. There's no fee to join, and you save 20% on your purchases. So this is a good time to put in your wine society commercial. Next, you're going to have wine number 3, present and share the ambassador program. So you're presenting the wine, talk about the wine, have people taste and talk about the aromas or whatever you want to share about that wine. And then you want to, at some point after maybe the chatter's died down, or, a little lead in that I might use is, hey, is everyone having a good time? Most likely people say, yes, we're having a good time. And at that point I'll say, well, awesome, I love hearing that. So this is essentially what I do as a wine ambassador. I get together with people to party, drink wine, have fun, and make money. So we are expanding our organization across the country, really looking for people who like wine to get involved. If you know someone who might like to do what I do, please let me know, and I'll give you some information that you can review or pass along. So I typically use something like that. It's very indirect, and it just gives people that option to, opt in or talk to me afterward. And you always want to circle back at the end too, to bring it up one more time. If you're looking for some additional words to say, then go to our Facebook files section. And there you're going to see, if you scroll through, you should see our document called Sample Language for Sponsoring. And I'm looking for it now, but, oh, here it is. you should see this document called Sponsoring What to Say in Sample Text. So this gives you some ideas of some words to say at a tasting, dropping sponsoring seeds throughout your tasting, before the tasting with the host, during the tasting. It also gives you some sample language to use, out and about, texting, social media. So, please reference this if you're looking for some ideas on language to use. But certainly in the tasting and even after the tasting, take a look at this and some things to say. Another note about sponsoring language or sponsoring during a tasting, just a little quickie, is talk to two. I always try and say talk to two people at the tasting, or identify at least two people at the tasting that you might want to share your business with. So there is that. So the next commercial you want to think about is, we talked about Wine Society, okay. Okay, so number 4, present wine number 4, and then discuss bookings and tastings. So, here you might want to say, again, this is something I love to do. I am, you might not know this, but it's very easy to host a tasting with me. We offer 5 or 6 different tasting experiences. Tonight we're having the classic tasting, but we also have a reserve tasting. We have a Franco-American tasting and a Grand Reserve tasting. So if you're interested, take a look at the tasting experiences, and I'll speak with you at the end of the tasting to see if it's something you might like to do with your group of friends. That's just one thing you can say. There's also some sample language here, which says, I have a handful of tasting events on my calendar. To book your tasting, just select a date that works best for you, and we can talk more about it later. So in this case, you might want to have a sample calendar that you're passing around, or that you have up at your wine station, so that people can look at available dates. So with wine number 5, and this is where it's great if you have a sample of the custom label wine, this is a great time to really talk about our custom label program and corporate gifting. And then also this is the opportunity to pass out contact cards. Now, I think this contact card is really, really great. Let me see. So here under training, you can go here and print out here. It says contact card. There's 4, I believe, to paper. And you can just go ahead and print this on a regular piece of paper through your printer, or again, cardstock, and use this at your tastings. I love these cards because it not only captures the contact information, but specifically what they might be interested in, which they aren't telling you. Because one of the things I have definitely found is a lot of people are interested in a lot of things, but they don't say it. But if it's right here in front of them and it's just a little check mark, people will let you know what they're interested in. So it's a good time to have this around. You can either have something like this in your folder, or to get their attention more, I would probably hand this out directly to people during your tasting and say, I'd love to stay in touch with you, let you know about our specials. And tonight, for all the cards, for all the completed cards, I'm actually pulling a winner for this wonderful prize, or whatever it is. Okay. So the prize can be something, not expensive. It can be something that's certainly non-alcoholic. It has to be something that's not wine, but maybe maybe there's a wine opener, or one of those wine glass little, things, those jewelry things that come from the glass, or wine markers to write names on the glass, something just, a little thing. Some people actually choose to give away a tasting. So maybe not giving the wine, but some people give away a tasting at something like that. Okay, and then lastly, okay, what do I want to say? Okay, so lastly, we're gonna at the um, wrapping up your tasting. So now you've presented your last wine. Everyone's had a good time. You know, they've listened to what she had to say. Everyone has a favorite. So it's a great time to go around the room and ask people what their favorite wine is. This is a good thing to do because one, you're going to get people engaged, involved. You're going to get more buy-in from like, oh, I like that one. I like that one too. And then people are kind of like supporting each other with, you know, purchasing their favorite. So it's a good one to go around the room. And then if someone says, "Oh my God, I really love that Sauvignon Blanc," you know, you can easily chime in with, "Oh my God, that's so perfect for the summer. That's really great with salads. It's a really great daytime wine." Or someone, you know, for a Frenchie or some sort of red wine blend, you know, I might throw in something like, "Oh my God, those are my favorite on, you know, when I'm at home and I just want to have a glass of wine after work. I don't have to have food with it. It's just my go-to." You know, something that kind of like um, validates, you know, their taste and their choice. The sheriff, for example. Oh my God, that is our number one. It's our most popular red wine blend. That is a great one. You know, I just kind of always validate what they prefer and what they want to go with. The other thing, okay, so now we've also come to the end. You want to really thank your host, thank all your guests for coming. You know, really for supporting you, for being there, sharing. You know what else they can do to be a part of your wine life. You know, please, I would take people through the order form, and I kind of walk them through each step. So on the order form. Find on the order form, it now, as we know, has the wines on the back side. So I would have one of these order forms in my hand, and then I take it out. So if you'd like, and I say something like, "Okay, great. So if we have more wine available, I can come around and pour an extra taste for you, so you can finalize your decision on what you'd like to order tonight." I'll also come around and ask you if you'd like to host a tasting with me. If you know what you'd like to order, here's how you do that. And I will just kind of, go through the order form, letting them know, billing, shipping, that someone has to be there to sign for it. So please give us an address where someone can sign. And then I asked them, I will go back again and just go over the Wine Society and the benefits of the Wine Society and the flexibility and the options, and have them kind of fill that out. And, finalizing with, it only takes 3 bottles, and we suggest 3 bottles anyway. You want to have one to enjoy now, you want to have one to share, and you want to have one to cellar to save for the future. Again, our wines are in small quantity, so it's a great idea to get several of your favorites. And by the way, the shipping is the same whether it's 1 bottle or 6 bottles. So it's actually better to order more of your favorite. um, so that would be my close in terms of the ordering process. And just want to see my notes here. Okay, and then lastly, again, I would come around, help people with their order, and ask them, each person, would you like to host a tasting? And you get their response, yes, no, maybe. Okay, great. And are you interested in the information about the wine ambassador business? Yes, no, maybe, whatever it is. If they say yes, you want to give them the opportunity brochure, and also set up a date to follow up with them. So set up a date that night of when you'd like to have a call with them to follow up, just to make sure they've got if they have any questions, that kind of thing. You're not trying to close them or sign them up on the spot. You're just creating a connection. So I think that's all I have for now. It's quite a bit, I know, but I wanted to really use this top tips for successful tasting as a guide, and as a way for us to all have the same material to follow along with. so we're all on the same page. So I am going to unmute everyone, and I want to open it up for questions. We have about 8 minutes, and I just want to see if there's any questions. Based on everything I went over, which is a lot. So, anyone? Okay.
Hi, Michonne. There's no information for me. This is Felicia. I was just listening to the call. Hi. I just all the information was very informative, so I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Thank you, Felicia. Anyone else? Okay. Well, again, if you have any questions, you're always welcome to give me a call or email, and I will certainly work with you on that. And let's see, is there anything, so what I like to do is go around and take sharing of your key takeaway from today's training, or anything else you want to kind of share about what you got out of the training today. I'm going to go in the order of the people I see on my screen. So I'm going to start with Chris. Uh-oh, I can't hear you, Chris. Oh, no. Okay, we can't hear you. All right, well, I see your smiling face. Okay. All right, so who wants to go next? Maybe Deidre? Oh, shit. Okay, Chris said the sponsoring and what to say was helpful. Okay. All right, good, Chris. Thank you. Deidre, are you there? Where? Okay. The sponsoring language, what to say, is actually found in the Facebook group. This is for everyone. So if you don't know about this, we have a bunch of files in the files section of our Facebook Bling group. So the BOISSET Bling group, if you look in files, you can find several resources, but the sponsoring language is in there. Great. Okay, Mercedes or Eric?
Hey, Michonne.
Hi.
Like Chris said, it was very informative. Something that I needed because I'm having something soon, so
Good.
it was definitely useful.
Great. Good, good, good.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sheila says, I love the connect cards. Okay, great. Into the chat. Perfect.
And this is Mercedes. Hey.
Hi, Mercedes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to your call. It's been very helpful. I have a tasting coming up on Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, wow.
So, this really helped me prepare for it. It's going to be, somewhat of a big event, and this is my first tasting. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I just wanted to get any information and all information I can get to make sure I'm looking as professional as possible.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on the call, and again, welcome to BOISSET.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I just want to throw out a challenge and an invitation. Oh, Chris says, I love this. I had a vendor event and you can connect cards. And the connect cards, they are great. They're really great for vendor events. I've used them there too, and it's awesome because you can talk to everyone. Connect cards, really great. Okay, wonderful. So I have a challenge and an invitation for all of you. One, if you have not scheduled your launch tasting or a tasting self-hosted tasted, I invite you to do that this month. And there are really some benefits to doing that. One, we have a host special this month. So in the month of May, you're gonna get a $50 credit for purchasing and hosting a tasting flight this month. So if you haven't already used your tasting wines from your business kit, or you didn't get tasting wines with your business kit, this is a great opportunity to go ahead and get a tasting flight and book your tasting for this month. and hold your tasting so that you will also get a $50 credit that you can use for your next tasting flight, or wines or jewelry or supplies, something like that. So who's up for having their tasting this month?
Me.
Yay, Eric. And I know Sheila has one coming up.
Already working on it.
Great, great. And I know Sheila's got 2 this month, so that's awesome. And Chris has got 3 possible bookings for May, which is wonderful, Chris. We got to talk.
Is this the same Chris here in Chicago?
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah, I met you at the tasting at the Fleming house, steakhouse.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. That's awesome, you guys. All right, well, I'm going to bring it to a close. This call is recorded, so you'll be able to kind of go back and review anything. But essentially, the top tips for tastings is going to be a good agenda, something for you to follow. Plus, of course, the tasting script and everything in between is available for you. But yeah, reach out to me if you need anything. I love talking to all of you, and I will talk to you soon. See you on Facebook. Bye.